Welcome to this latest edition of The Delivery Prophets, brought to you by the delivery world together with Avico. We're always so grateful for all of you out there who tune in regularly for this podcast. Without you, we're just a bunch of guys and gals talking to each other in a recording studio. I'm Peter Backman, and today, together with John Borzacchiello and our special guest Máté Kun, as usual, we'll talk about delivery in general and ways to make it accessible and profitable. And no doubt we'll get on to other topics too, as we try to get a deep understanding of the forces shaping this rapidly evolving sector. But before we get on to that, John, I spent a bit of time in hospital recently, not myself, but my wife, who fell over and unfortunately broke her wrist. The experience, though, and I have to say it was private, was very, very reassuring. And certainly within about 10 minutes of being admitted, they'd solved the problem, but not the problem for me, because the problem came in the fact that I had my wife that needed a cast on her hand, on her arm, and I had to look after her. So I became a bit of a baby minder for a bit, and it's quite strange turning into that sort of person again. You've got kids. Do you find being a child minder in the broader sense is fun or something you want to get out of?
Firstly, Peter, I thought you were going to say you'd become a nurse again, but a babysitter is a good option. It's very similar, isn't it? But yeah, having the kids is always challenging. You've been there yourself. Mine are 7 and 10 now. So they're becoming very independent, especially a 7-year-old. He knows absolutely everything about everything, including every football player, I think, in the Premier League.
But he'll also know all about the technology that is defeating you.
Oh, definitely. He has my phone. He's playing. He's predicting scores for the weekend for all the teams. He picks his own fantasy football team. He knows how to work it much better than me. He's coming in, Daddy, look, I've picked my team for the weekend. I'm like, how has that just took you 5 minutes? Because if I did it, I'd be there for a good 20 minutes.
Well, yeah, sure. And in my day, also, we did the football pools. I don't know what's happened to them.
They're still there, aren't they? I haven't done them for a long time. Still have a little flutter now and again on a betting app on a Saturday as I'm on the way to see the mighty Leicester City. Hopefully a win this week. First one back in the Premier League, Peter, with any luck.
Well, let's keep our hopes up.
Fingers crossed.
So I think it's probably the time for me to read my initial notes that I prepared earlier. So, and they go something like this. When restaurant delivery emerged in its current form, that was 10 or so years ago, when Delivery Hero became a name across many countries, Seamless and Caviar started in the USA, Deliveroo started in the UK, things were quite simple. The delivery company posted your restaurant offer on its app, or often in those days on its web page. The customer made their choice, the driver was engaged and delivered the meal. But like all things that are simple, especially in this rapidly growing market, things became complicated. This is usually because the model didn't work too well in parts, and someone spied an opportunity to add a tweak, usually with a service attached to software in some way. The tweak would help the various parties. But complexity added to complexity. And then ghost kitchens emerged, or perhaps they've always been around for a very long time, masquerading as central production units for caterers. And then someone spotted the opportunity to create brands that only existed in ghost kitchens. We've covered these topics with many of our insightful guests, but the point I want to make and end on is that the extension of this complexity is slowing down, and in its place is a growing concentration on the things that really work, by which I mean things that grow and make a profit. So let's see if we can spot them. I think we're living in exciting times. John, what do you think?
Peter, we were both a couple of weeks ago at the Lunch and Casual Dining Show. We had a stand, you did some amazing guest speaking in the theatres. But what I found as I walked around by myself, just having a look at the different stands, at the different operators there, was the amount of different things that are geared towards delivery now from different operators, be it a store that's got bikes, be it a store that has bags, takeaway packaging, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, they're all there, the manufacturer there. So this whole, like you say, industry has put itself into what traditionally a lunch and casual dining show was a dine-in. There's shows out there that we know about for the Takeaway Expo that are geared towards, but this home delivery is coming more and more and more into the whole restaurant world, isn't it?
I think you make an interesting point, because it has been around for 10 or so years, and it's only now, or perhaps in the last couple of years, where it's become noticed by traditional suppliers to the industry. And I think that's quite an interesting point. And it probably adds to what I was saying about the industry entering a new phase.
Definitely. And the other thing that I've noticed, and going away from your comments here, is the cost. So the cost to us as a consumer for a delivery has done exactly what the restaurants, hotels, pubs have all had to do, is they've had to put their prices up over the last 3, 4, 5 years with inflation, with rising costs, with rising food costs, rents, etc. But they're a knock-on for delivery as well. It's not a cheaper option to do delivery. And a perfect example is last Saturday, myself and my wife had a takeaway from our local Indian restaurant. If I look back pre-COVID, that was £25 max for starters and mains. We had a main each, a couple of sides and a bread, £45 delivered. And you just say, wow.
Yes.
To sit in my house, Peter, and have that. I'm not going and getting that experience that I talk about so often. I'm at home watching, unfortunately, Strictly Come Dancing, but...
Well, maybe our guest can add to that. So I think it's time to bring on Máté Kun, who's our guest today. Máté, CEO of Growth Kitchen, with a storied career, which we may find out about while we continue our discussion. But I just sort of an open question. Is there anything that we've said up till now that you want to take issue with or add to or comment on? I've got a list of other questions that we can go with, but that's one for starters.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here.
You're welcome.
I'm a fan of the podcast, and it's good to be part of it. We were at the casual dining event as well, and we had a booth for ourselves. So I guess that just adds to your previous point that like non-traditional players are, starting to participate in these more traditional events as well. We found it very fun to like engage with all the different pubs and suppliers and different people in the industry.
So let me throw a question onto the table, because this is part of your history, I guess. What can we learn from ghost kitchens and the ghost kitchen story and the journey that ghost kitchens have been on, both in this country and if you feel comfortable about it, or in other countries as well?
Sure. I think during COVID, a lot of restaurants decided that it's a good idea they got disrupted, right? So all of a sudden they didn't have people dining in their restaurants. But they seemed to be a bit scared to ask the hard questions, and they had this thing where, COVID is only going to last a few years, so we need a temporary solution. And ghost kitchens provided that temporary solution, so they flourished during COVID. And it was a simple, easy answer to their problems. It gave them reach, it gave them an extension to their delivery networks. But I guess as COVID subsided, they just didn't really work that well. The reality of it is you're still paying rent, you're still employing people, you're paying 20, 30, whatever % to delivery apps on every single order that you have, and you're just not exposing your brand to consumers. So you're missing out on that brand piece, and your cost base doesn't really come down. And they only work in large cities as well. Good luck going into a smaller city with a traditional ghost kitchen that you're operating with staff, you're just not going to have enough demand to justify it.
Yeah. And within ghost kitchens, that whole story, we've spoken to 2 or 3 people, or probably more than that, over the last couple of years, of people who are sort of making it work, but not perhaps in the purest form. I'm thinking of our first guest, Eki Newton from Karma Kitchens, and their model is central processing unit, catering, plus ghost kitchens for restaurants sort of added onto it. We also spoke to Chris Baggett in the States, who set up and runs Cluster Truck, which is a very much an integrated ghost kitchen model where the software was actually there before the kitchen was. So I think there are things within ghost kitchens that mean that there isn't a pure model, but take it to your point, it was a simple model that drove the take-up during COVID. And now it may be moving on to somewhere where the ghost kitchen just becomes integrated and isn't identified as a unit on its own. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's a sort of a general feeling that I got.
Yeah. I mean, if we define ghost kitchens as like a kitchen that you rent as a restaurant and then you operate it yourself, in that narrow definition, I think they're dead. There is a place for it. I mean, if you look at the data, not many ghost kitchens got opened in the past couple of years. Some central, like London and other large city locations, still operate and kind of tick along, but they're not going to become a big business that truly revolutionize the way the world eats and the way restaurants think about delivery and expansion more broadly. Now, what we found, I mean, we operated a couple ghost kitchens ourselves. We sold them probably 9 months ago now to Jacuna. And we found that as we were running these kitchens, we opened our 3rd location, and some of the restaurants that were renting kitchens from us in the first 2 units that we operated were asking us if we could. They wanted to expand, but they just couldn't justify the costs of operating those kitchens. So they asked if we would be willing to take on their brand and operate it out of a kitchen. So that was kind of like big, like aha moment for us, where we said, oh, that's quite interesting. Like the Athenian wants us to run their brand in one of the ghost kitchens. Could we actually like make the model work? Like, could we pair them up with maybe another restaurant and just run them out of the same unit and drive efficiencies on equipment, on staffing, on supply chain, and those sorts of things? So that's kind of like how our new business model evolved. And boy, it evolved. Like it's within 9 months, it's like 3 times the size of what the ghost kitchen model ever was.
Máté, I've got a double question here, so I just want to park dark kitchens for 1 minute, because there's a really important question that I feel our listeners will want to understand is, can you explain growth kitchens in your business of how it is now? Because before we carry on down this journey, me and Peter have obviously read up and know where you are, but for our listeners, what is growth kitchen? Where's growth kitchen come from? And what does growth kitchen look like in the future?
Sure. I think, we've always been on the exact same mission since the very beginning of the company, and that's to revolutionize the way the world eats. And we see restaurants as the next frontier of delivering convenience and ways to eat to the end consumer. So we as humans have been striving to drive convenience in how we eat since we discovered fire. We learn how to hunt, we learn how to gather, then we learn how to farm, then we learn how to put those products in grocery stores, then we learn how to deliver that food from grocery stores, then we packaged up the ingredients and pre-cooked them so people only had to microwave them at home. And I feel the next level of convenience comes from restaurants, and it's quite strange because Deliveroo and Uber Eats and Just Eat, they kind of disrupted how restaurants operate, and people thought about it as like an add-on revenue that just drives extra sales out of their existing locations. Now, today, that's different. Like, food delivery has evolved to this huge sector that is a completely different way of eating and running a restaurant than it is to provide a dine-in experience to people. So what we do as Growth Kitchen is trying to tap into that huge market and basically pick the very best restaurants on food delivery platforms, which is not that many, to be honest. Like, if you think about your behavior as a customer, you go on to Deliveroo. I mean, if I open Deliveroo here in Waterloo, I'd probably get 1,200 restaurants. Like, the human brain just can't process it. So what happens is I look at the top 10 and I pick one out of that. Now, if you're in the top 50 to 100, maybe you have a chance to become that top 10, right? So what we're trying to do is pick those top 100 and give them the ability to distribute their food outside of areas where they operate a brick and mortar store. So think like, Warrington or smaller cities where you even, let's say, if you're Tishum or Tortilla, you would probably not want to be opening a brick and mortar store there because there wouldn't be enough demand for your product, right?
For the benefit of our US listeners, Warrington is sort of the equivalent of Peoria.
There you go.
So, sorry, I had to get that in.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And, like putting these brands into these locations where there would be a lot of demand for their product for delivery and being able to pair them up maybe with another brand that is not a direct competitor to them and put them into a kitchen that is already in Warrington, like a pub or a hotel or a locally popular restaurant that is just struggling to take advantage of delivery because their food is not designed for delivery. And letting those people finish up the assembly of these brands while the brand still controls the centralized production of the food is revolutionary.
And you have just described franchising, at least you described it to me. And of course, franchising has a long history in the restaurant sector, particularly the fast food operators. Take a brand, systematize the systems and sell that system approach to as other operators who expand the brand and provide additional revenue for the brand owner. That's what franchising says to me, and I think it's what you've been describing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of franchising. Franchising is incredible, and I think it's somewhat underappreciated in Europe. If you go to the continent, there's not many franchise restaurants outside of the American brands. The UK is somewhat, more advanced in it, but still there's a slight, underappreciation of franchising, even in this country.
Is that?
Firstly, I apologise to the people of Warrington, but I live in Warrington then, and Athenian, which is one of the brands Grove Kitchen work with, has a location there that's serviced through her hotel. How do I find out about the Athenian? I've never heard of the Athenian. I don't know what food the Athenian does. As a consumer living in Warrington, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the reason, why virtual brands don't work either, because nobody wants to order a soulless brand that just got created out of thin air. No matter how much money and effort you're pouring into building out their social media, the Athenian got created by Tim at a food stall. It grew in London to many, many authentic locations. The ingredients still come from Greece. It's truly authentic Greek food. And it has got 100,000 Instagram followers that are truly fans of the brand. I was in Athens a few weeks ago, and even our Airbnb host has heard about the Athenian and loved the brand. Those are the brands you want to be scaling. And then they take care of the brand building. And we as Growth Kitchen, we're experts in how to market yourself within delivery apps. So we employ heaps of data scientists. We're pulling all the data from the different delivery apps, and we're figuring out which offer resonates the best with that local audience, whether it's students, whether it's families, whether it's individuals, and what time of the day does the offer resonate? Like, is it lunch or dinner? And there are local variances across those. And then you layer in advertising, which the delivery apps are really like pushing nowadays, where you try to figure out what's the best bid for me to bid on an ad space. And how does that vary based on the day of the week, based on the hour of the day? How do I make sure that I'm not spending huge amounts of money, but I spend the exact right amount of money, so 0.32 pounds or 0.36 pounds? That little change makes a huge difference to the profits of the brands, and we take care of that as a growth kitchen, while the brand takes care of building up their brand and being truly authentic in bringing their food.
I'd like to just sort of step in there, and I've got some questions about who actually does the cooking, but I just want to make a comment here midway through the show that if you're enjoying the show, please consider supporting us by leaving a 5-star rating on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. Your ratings and reviews mean the world to us and help more people discover our content. Plus, it's the best way to show your appreciation for the hard work the Delivery World team, the Avico team, and our fabulous guests put into each and every episode. So go ahead, hit the 5-star button. There are instructions on the show notes. And let's continue with today's fantastic episode. So my question, and I know John's got some questions as well. I can see on the look on his face. My question is, who does the cooking, though, in this model that you're describing?
Well, setting up the supply chain is, first of all, incredibly important and challenging for most restaurants. And I'm a technology person with a bit of hospitality background, first of all. But we do have, within Growth Kitchen, we're combining pretty hardcore AI and data science capabilities with in-depth hospitality experience. So some of our colleagues have worked in very senior positions at Wagamama, at Tortilla, at Burger King, and so on and so forth. And being able to combine a data science piece with the hospitality piece is key. So that allows us to help brands set up their supply chain in a way that the vast majority of the cooking and the hard parts of the cooking can be done centrally by the brands. And then the near-ready product gets distributed to all these different kitchens, who you can think of as like an assembly line. So if you're a pub or a restaurant that runs their own brand, you might not have the time or the skills to let's say, cook the Athenian from scratch and marinate the meat the exact same way as the brand has intended it to. But they do have the skill and time to finish up the cooking, so just heat up the food, put it all together, package it up, and then send it out to the customers. So those are the people who do the final bit.
And I guess there are a lot of people around the country who are in that position, who value additional business and who can add value to the brand, and the brand can add value to their operation. It seems to me a real win-win situation.
Yeah, just back to the point on franchising, like the reason I love franchising is because you truly incentivize a local operator to take care of the last bits of the cooking. And those operators do really tough work, like hiring and managing local people and making sure that the food gets cooked really well is tough. So they should benefit from the upside. So that's kind of like, if you're a restaurant owner or a pub owner and you take on this venture, like why wouldn't you benefit from the upside of that brand? And that does incentivize them to prioritize the brand. And yeah, as you said, there's tons of them out there.
So it seems that what you're talking about is a focus on the brand. That's the important thing, because a lot of people, when they talk about delivery, are thinking about the product or the price. And focusing on something different. And where you can actually make a difference by adding value, it makes an awful lot of sense to focus on the brand per se. Anyway, those are my thoughts on what you've said. But another thing that you have said, and so underlying what you're talking about, is people. The role of people in this whole process, because delivery is based on having the right food. The right food it depends on having the right people. So I don't know whether you have any views about, well, I'm sure you do, but do you have anything you want to say about people in this context that we've been talking about?
Yeah, I mean, people are key. First of all, the franchisees are incredibly important, those that are in charge of the kitchen, right? But also the chefs, making the food very simple for them to produce and cook, and with a good flow in the kitchen that doesn't stress them out more than they're already stressed. And the drivers as well, right? Like they love the freedom of choosing their own working hours, and we're very grateful to them as well for delivering the food to people. And I guess just back to your earlier point, like, I still see food delivery as like, I mean, today in some of the most advanced markets, it's only 2% of the total food that we're eating. That's an incredible niche. Like, the other 98% is there to unlock. And like, how do you unlock? How do you make food delivery the main form of eating? It's through availability of great brands. So scaling the very best restaurants that I have access to in London, but some people who live outside of large cities might not have access to those brands. And the second part is driving down the cost, right? So driving down the cost of ordering, as you said earlier, like, your favorite Indian has doubled in price. Like, that should be the opposite, right? Cost of it should be going down. And as you're scaling these brands and you're getting to thousands of locations, first of all, you have more leverage over the broader ecosystem around you. And secondly, you can start driving efficiencies across the brands where you can use the same people, you can use the same equipment, you can use the same space. And you can use data and AI to control the quality of those locations and ensure that your area managers who we employ visit the right kitchens. And when they visit those kitchens, they do the right things and they get to the bottom of the problem, to the root cause of the problem, and not just trying to treat the surface problems.
So having people who can identify problems and can come up with solutions is important, as it always is. I mean, there's nothing new in that. But I guess if you have a properly constructed system and allow people within the system to work effectively on their own, that must be a formula that ought to work without costs running away.
Yeah, I think the main problem is, like, there's hospitality businesses and there are technology businesses. And the tech guys, they shy away from building deep capabilities in hospitality, whereas the hospitality businesses, the restaurants, don't have the ability or the money or the skills to hire and get really good technology talent as well in the business. So the ability to combine those two is a truly unique skill set. Like, if you have a data scientist who can actually collaborate with an operations manager and figure out, like, how can I enable this operations person to be more effective in these kitchens? How can I leverage cutting-edge technology to send them to the right places and give them the right knowledge to train the kitchens? That's where the magic comes in. And I think that's the future of truly disruptive businesses in hospitality.
Máté, I'm going to look at this from a completely different angle to what we've spoke on for now. What I also, listening to what you say, is I'm a hospitality person, you're more techie, Pete, you're hospitality. You're also helping the hospitality industry here massively. As in, I've just had a look. I live up in Leicestershire, so I've gone on and I've had a look if there's an feed-in in Leicester, and there is. And it's run out of a place I've never been to. But when I look at it, it's not a densely populated area where this restaurant is in Leicester, but you're giving that restaurant a real opportunity to overperform, whereas they may be underperforming at the moment, doing their own offering, whereas you're giving them the tools and the ability to grow their business as well. So that's saving jobs in hospitality from a business that, if they couldn't turn to Growth Kitchen, maybe, unfortunately, in 6 months be out of business. Do you look at it like that as well from that point of view?
Yeah, no, 100%. I was at a pub conference. The reason I brought up Warrington is because I was there last week. And we do have a kitchen there as well. It's run by Ian. He's a fabulous guy. And he runs a local fish and chip store. And he was a bit skeptical of the model at first. So we had to have a lot of conversations with him. And today he's trading probably like £4,000 or £5,000 of extra sales every single week with our brand. And when I met him, he was so happy. He hugged me and he's like, "Oh my God, I love your business. I love what you guys are doing. It's fantastic. It's a great addition to my company." And there's many other examples. Like we work with a pub in near Heathrow Airport, and the money that they're able to generate out of our brands and cooking our brand enable them to refurbish the pub and open a second pub. I mean, how incredible is that? And we don't employ a huge amount of people in Growth Kitchen. We employ exceptional talent. But indirectly, we've created well over 100 jobs now, if not hundreds. That's pretty awesome.
We're in danger of turning this into a fantastic discussion, and very interesting about Growth Kitchen.
But not about delivery again, Peter.
Which is a great story, I have to say.
Sorry, I have my sales hat on all the time.
No, not at all. I think it's absolutely fine, because actually it's a different business, and the reasons for its difference are worth exploring. So I think it's absolutely fine. But I'd just like to switch the focus just a little bit, and pick you up on a point that you said, and I'm paraphrasing. At the moment, we are covering 2% of the market. Just think if we could get the other 98%. I think I'm paraphrasing, but this is sort of turning towards the future. So if your numbers are correct, and I have no reason to doubt that they're not, or that they may be absolutely correct, that means that the delivery business can be 50 times the size it is now. Is that realistic? What does it look like? There are a whole range of questions. So I've just got a simple question: is what changes do you see coming up, or do you think might be coming up in delivery over the next 4 or 5 years?
I mean, it takes vision to believe that delivery can become the main form of eating, right? If you just take it as it is today, it's mostly a luxury thing that people would just do when they feel a bit tired and they don't want to eat out or they don't want to cook. Now, if you fast forward into the future, I don't have a reason to doubt that people, I don't know where the tipping point is, but if you can get incredible brands into everyone's doorstep that they love, and they're diverse, and they're great for every occasion, whether they want to eat healthy on a Monday or they want to indulge on a Friday. And you can get the price of those brands down to an affordable level where people don't have to pay 3-4 times the price of going to Tesco's and buying ingredients and cooking at home. But maybe, I don't know where that number is, but maybe it's 2 times. At some point, people will just switch completely, and they'll be like, okay, it's like having a private chef. I just don't want to bother anymore. I'm willing to pay that extra money for the convenience I'm getting. And that's where the true magic lies, I think, in food delivery. I think it'll always be combined with some grocery items. Like, I don't really see people like ordering breakfast every day, but like they could order some porridge or whatever with their dinner order and have it cooked at home in the morning because it's simple already.
You say about breakfast. I personally see the day parts have all merged now. There's breakfast, lunch, dinner, brunch, munch. They're all there, yeah? Everything. Mm-hmm. You say breakfast isn't, but if we look at day parts, lunch is pretty much covered by a lot of people. Dinner's pretty much covered by, and evenings pretty much. The one that is maybe missing more is the breakfast stroke brunch. If I'm sure you'd love to work with someone like the Breakfast Club and roll that out nationwide, because there is an absolute call for it. It's not just a bacon butty from a local cafe or a Mackey's, or the Breakfast Club have nailed London and the South East, and no one can disagree with that, what they've done. If that was to roll out nationwide under a Grove Kitchen format for delivery, is that not a huge part that is not there in a lot of these Leicesters, Stockports, Huddersfields, Skegness,
Warrington?
That's what, if you're looking at that out of city London space, out of Birmingham, out of Manchester, is that not something that would appeal to the masses?
I think, well, first of all, we're looking at it very closely, that category. And you're absolutely right. Like, there are some local cafes and operators that would love to participate in food delivery more, and they would absolutely love cooking the Breakfast Club. Now, I think the problem is that you have to look at, like, what's the behavior of the consumer, right? Like, do they actually order breakfast in Stockport and Warrington? As I said earlier, food delivery is still at its nascency, where it's an indulgence. It's very, like, most people just see it as like an occasional treat that they get for themselves, like once or twice a week. I order a lot, and a lot of my friends in central London order a lot. But when is that going to become so widespread that people will go, all right, now my dinners are covered, now my lunches are covered, now I want to have my breakfast covered as well? I still don't order breakfast that often personally. I don't know if you do.
To be honest, where I live, it's hard to get any sort of delivery. So I'd order breakfast if I could, but I'd prefer an evening meal. But I get what you're saying. Peter, almost with delivery then, and we've touched on this before, is delivery so focused on cities and city centres? Yes, suburbs of London, but Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds. Is that where it is, Peter, rather than Warrington, Loughborough?
Well, I think the answer to that is, at the moment, and wherever you look around the world, delivery is city-focused. And that's because the dynamics and the costs sort of dictate that you have to have a certain density of customers and a certain density of suppliers, which tends to be found in cities. I think there are opportunities to change the actual ratio of costs, so and therefore move a profitable business into smaller areas. So don't worry, John. In a few years, you can have your dinner delivered. There'll be a problem.
Máté, I'm going to come to you for it because, again, just to touch on something we were talking about pre-podcast here, is the way you wanting to work it is you've got an Athenian, you're launching with Cockfighter very soon, you're talking about multiple brands out of one location. Then that gives people in these outer city towns an option to get multi-brands through one operator. Is that something that is going to be Grove Kitchen Network's future?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't believe that cooking like 10 brands out of one kitchen is the solution here. Like, I don't really think that having a huge amount of brands that do like a few £100 of sales is the answer. Having the leader of each category or the top 3 of each category is vastly different from that. And yeah, I mean, to your point, Peter, like, delivery has started in cities and it's most widespread in cities. But Uber Eats, Delivery, Just Eat, they cover well over 90% of the UK. The problem is that these restaurants are not available there. So the supply is just not there for people to want to order regularly. And that's why delivery apps love working with us, because we're bringing incredible supply to underserved markets. That's about 30 million people in the UK today who live in those areas where most brands could, unless they're McDonald's, they could only just dream of ever opening a profitable standalone location in those places.
Well, that's a great point to end up on. So I've picked up some key words in this conversation. A market 50 times its current size, franchising within the delivery space, and delivery reaching a tipping point at some point in the future. Tipping to be defined and the future to be defined. So I think that's really great. Máté, very quickly, because we haven't got very long, is there anything that you've said that you want to add to, or that you feel needs further explanation? To my mind, everything's been very clear, but you might feel that you want to add something.
No, if it's been clear to you, Peter, I'm very happy. I would just like to encourage everyone in the sector to think collaboratively and let's grow the pie together. Let's step into each other's expertise. I don't want to build brands. Brands shouldn't want to get into data science. Everyone should just collaborate. Let's leverage the delivery apps. Let's work all together to make food delivery the next way of consuming food for everyone.
Máté, that sounds fantastic. If our listeners want to get hold of you, want to talk about partnership with you, get their restaurants into Leicester and Warrington and other cities around the UK, how can they get hold of you to work with Growth?
Just go on our website and fill in a form.
And that is?
growthkitchen.co.
.co, so remember that.
Yeah.
And also, I take it you're on LinkedIn. They can hook up on there with you.
100%.
Perfect.
So it's a big thank you to our fantastic guest, Máté Kun, for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And here's a reminder that whether you're a delivery company, a marketplace app, a technology company, a restaurant owner, an investor, or simply someone who loves to order takeaway, the Delivery Profits is the perfect way to stay informed and ahead of the curve in the world of food delivery. You'll find the Delivery Profits on Spotify, Apple, or on the other places where you normally get your podcasts. And please support the show by leaving your 5-star rating. There's more at the delivery.world/the Delivery Profits. And here's a big thank you to Máté, to John and Avico for sponsoring this show, and for you for listening. Tune in to the next edition of the Delivery Profits for the insights, interviews and analysis that will keep you ahead of the game in this exciting and ever-evolving industry. And with that, it's goodbye from today's Delivery Profits. That's Máté and John and me. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.